Hey guys, Chris Fix here. Today I'm going to show you how to change the upper and lower radiator hoses. I'm also going to show you how to diagnose a bad radiator hose, and I'll also let you know when a radiator hose should be changed and what to look for. So here's everything you're going to need for the job. In my case, I'm just going to need pliers, and then the lower and upper radiator hose. And then what you also might need is some clamps, just in case your clamps are old and they don't spring anymore. You could get the springy type, or you could get the type that you clamp down yourself, like this hose clamp. And in that case, you might need a nut driver or a screwdriver because it's a flathead. And then you also might need a bucket if you have radiator fluid. In my case, I don't. So let's get to work. The first thing I want to go over is what a radiator hose is. Radiator hose is a hose that goes from your radiator, which is underneath this fan, and there's a top one that goes into the engine or the water pump or whatever. And then there's a bottom one, which is down here. I'll go on the floor right now. But it's at the bottom corner of the radiator. And you can see it right there, that big thick one. That's at the bottom. And what these hoses do is take radiator fluid and move it from the radiator into the engine, then from the engine back into the radiator to be cooled. So they're pretty important so that your engine doesn't overheat. If you get a leak in one or one catastrophically fails, like in my case, your engine could overheat. This car has about 300,000 miles on it, and it's 20 years old almost. So you want to start checking your hoses when your hoses are about 15 years old, or your car has 250,000 miles on it. Hoses usually last a long time. A lot of times they never need changing, but just to be safe, it's always a good idea. So what happened in my case is I had a catastrophic failure, and you could see here, the hose is completely ripped. It's just torn open from the pressure. And it caused all the fluid to go drain out while I was driving. That's not good. Good thing I was close to home and I got home, no problem, no overheating, no engine damage. Now, how I knew this went is because there was a lot of steam coming out of my engine, and that's like one of the first things that you'll see when there's a radiator hose going. You'll see steam because the antifreeze and water will leak, hit the engine, and steam up. And the last thing is if you get a high engine temp. So if your engine temps are up and you don't know why, a lot of times it's because your coolant's not in your radiator, or you're not getting coolant to your radiator. It could be a water pump, or like I said, could be the hose. Now, to try to even avoid this situation, like I said before, about 200,000 miles you want to check them. And what you do is you just squeeze it. People say to do it with the engine warm. I don't like that idea because you'll burn yourself. But you're just looking for inconsistencies. You go along and you squeeze it. So a lot of times this has a cover, so I can't do anything. This is just a heat shield for the air box, but a lot of times you'll feel a really spongy spot or a really soft spot, or you'll see cracks. Cracks mean it's bad. If there's a bulge somewhere, a bulge in this so it pops up, that means it's bad. If it's soft here and then hard here, a lot of times that means you could be going bad. The biggest thing is soft spots. A lot of times there's metal wire in here, so you won't notice it being soft until something goes bad. Now, if you think your radiator hose has gone bad, what you do is you just squeeze it. And listen, I'm going to put this next to the crack. You could hear air coming in and out of that. So that's a good way to see where your crack is, to see if the hose is bad. The other thing is just visual inspection for cracks and bulges and stuff. And obviously that's pretty easy to see. This job is super easy, and it's crazy how much the mechanics will charge. I got some averages. For this car, I got a $175 quote. That's parts and labor. The parts only cost me $40, so give you an idea. On a Honda Accord, it's $150. On an Audi A4, it's $250. On a BMW 3 Series, it's $200. So you get the idea. The average is like $150 to $250 just to change out two simple radiator hoses. And on most cars, the radiator hose isn't that bad to get to, as you can see here. So we're gonna work on getting this top radiator hose taken off. And it's pretty simple. There's a clamp on the radiator, and then you follow the hose and there's a clamp on the engine, and that's actually where the thermostat sits. Now might be a good time to change your thermostat depending on when you changed it, but we'll focus on that in another video because I don't need to change my thermostat. It's relatively new. So you just get your pliers on here and then wiggle the clamp right off. And when that one is loosened up, we'll make it even easier for ourselves. And we'll loosen this one up. Okay. Just gonna use your hands here. Might want to use the screwdriver. Help your pry it a little bit. And then when you're taking these off, I find it's good to wiggle it left and right, or clockwise and counterclockwise, just to break the seal, and then pull it out. Okay. So once we get this side, it'll make it easier to get this side. If you want, you can take your air box out or whatever's in the way. I'm being lazy. I'm able to do it without doing that, so. If you need to use that flathead screwdriver to get underneath to help pry this up, that could be helpful. Just get that lip up, just like that. Just getting that lip up will help a lot, because then it'll break that seal that forms because it's just, you know, old and there's fluid and stuff. After you break that seal with the screwdriver, you want to just wiggle it clockwise, counterclockwise. That'll break the seal around the whole end, and then just pull it right off, just like so. There's a little bit of extra coolant left in this hose, not much. So just keep it facing upwards. Remember when I said we had to use a bucket? Well, here's a good time to use the bucket. Now we'll unclamp the hose clamps, because we're going to use them again. You can see where this radiator hose split. It's completely open here. Now we'll get the other hose clamp, pull it off. So my hose clamps are still really good. They're nice and tight. As you can see, it takes a good amount of force to open them up. There's no cracks or anything, so I'm going to reuse them. So right now, when this is off, just slide it down, make sure it's not going to interfere or anything. Do the other side too. Good, and now let's put this on the car. Now this is just as easy, if not easier, than taking it off. You got your spot here that connects to the engine, and your spot here that connects to the radiator. I'm going to put the engine spot in first. One thing you might want to do before you put them on, clean off the nozzle here, just to get all the gunk off of it and make sure it has a smooth surface. And the other thing is, you might want to spray it with some WD-40. Just a little bit of WD-40 like that will help you out a lot when you're trying to slide this thing on. So once you get over that lip, the rest is pretty easy. You just push it right on. Now you see it's sitting up against that notch from before. Now we're going to wait to put the clamp on, and we're going to do the other side, which should actually, like, it's already lining up pretty good. So this shouldn't be a problem. Just hit this end with a little bit of WD-40. So the reason why you leave that clamp undone is because then you could wiggle this. Beautiful. Okay, now we can put the clamps on. Another thing to mention is you want to make sure your clamps are in a good direction so that you could easily grab them. Because if they're not, they could be upside down and you might have a hard time spinning them. There you go. Now just place your clamp right on there. You can see the clamp is in a good spot. Let's go work on the next one. Just wiggle that in there. So now we have our clamp on here and our clamp on here, both sitting up against the end of the hose. And you want to make sure your heat shield is in the correct spot, which it is. And the top is done. Now we're going to go underneath, do the lower radiator hose next. This is where you're going to probably need your bucket. So now we're going to change the lower radiator hose. So you can see the lower radiator hose clamp on to the engine part. I think it goes to the water pump. Is pretty easy to get to. And this is a little tight in here, but if you turn the pliers sideways, it should be pretty easy to get to also. I have a bucket ready, just in case. I don't know how much radiator fluid's still in here, but you don't want it to get on the ground and pollute, so pull that off. I don't know how much is left in here. Here it comes. Okay. That's not that much. Just let that drain out. After most of that drains, take off this hose clamp. So now we're gonna get that hose clamp off and take this hose off. Okay. Now once the hose clamp is off and out of the way, we're gonna pull this hose off. Twist it clockwise and counterclockwise, get it broken loose, start pulling. There we go. Now we'll just put the hose clamps on the new one and get the new one in and then fill it up with coolant. So get your hose clamps, put them in the middle, get both of them on there, and let's go install this. Another tip to make this install easier is run your hose under warm water. You can see my lens is fogging up because it's so hot. This is really hot. You could also use like a heat gun or something. This will help make it more malleable. Spray some WD-40 on the inside or on the end. One thing I didn't mention before is you should always make sure the hoses are the same length, the same bends and stuff. And this is pretty close. This isn't as good, but it's doable. So remember, the curved part was facing into the water pump, and the straight part was going into the lower radiator hole. So we're just gonna put this in here, and then connect our bottom hose. And make sure it goes all the way down. Good. Once it's all the way down, we'll put the hose clamps on and fill it up with antifreeze. Now I take our hose clamp and just slide it down all the way to the back. Like so. Make sure when you let go in an area that you could get your pliers back in a future date. So that's a good spot right in the corner there. So let's go do the other one. Move this clamp all the way up. And now we can fill the radiator with coolant. So now we'll locate the overflow tank for the coolant. Open that up, and also we want to find the radiator cap. And then we take the radiator cap off. We're going to fill the radiator up, and then we're going to fill this up. We're going to be using a 50-50 antifreeze to water mixture, which is recommended for this vehicle. I'm using a little funnel to help me out. If you don't have a funnel, you could just cut a water bottle or a soda bottle and use the cap end to put the cap end here. Make sure you use the correct antifreeze for your vehicle. Make sure you know how much antifreeze you're going to need to use, and that'll all be in the owner's manual. Now once it starts slowing down and coming at the top, what you're going to do is you're going to burp the system. And there's no bleeder valve or anything on the water pump anywhere in this vehicle. If there was, you just loosen the bleeder valve and you fill it the rest of the way up. But since there's no bleeder valve, what you do, you go to the upper radiator hose and you squeeze it. And you can hear. And what this is doing is this is forcing all that air out. And you can see how much more I could add. Now you can see it's all the way up to the top. And you can see like bubbles are starting to come out. Watch what happens. I'm squeezing it right now. Ready? Forcing all that air out. So you're going to just repeat that until you think you're pretty good. And then you're going to fill this up to the mark where it says full cold. So my radiator is filled. Now I'm filling my overflow tank. So after that's filled up to the mark, we can take that out. Close that. So now we'll put our radiator cap back on. So you just put it back on, you push down and you twist until it locks. And now we're going to run the engine and watch the temperature, make sure it doesn't overheat. And you want to keep an eye on your temperature here. That temperature gauge is super important. If you have an air bubble because it's not being bled properly, you could still overheat, even though we added all that coolant. So we'll let it run to get to a little bit warmer of a temperature so the thermostat starts opening up. Right now the water pump is spinning, but the thermostat over here is closed. As this is running, we'll check our new hoses and the clamps to make sure they're not leaking. That looks good. That one looks good. That looks good. And that one looks good. We'll give that one more check at the end, but everything looks good right now. So we're waiting for that to get up somewhere in the normal area, and we're going to keep an eye on it. I'm going to sit inside here because you want to make sure it doesn't overheat. Another thing you're going to want to do is turn the heat on. That gets the coolant flowing through the heater core, which could also trap bubbles. You want to make sure heat is coming out. The heat is coming out, that means there's no air in that system. If there's no heat, you could still have air in the system, so you'd want to bleed it some more. After about 15 minutes of idling and a quick test drive, everything checks out, and this job is complete. If this video was helpful, give it a thumbs up. Also, if you like watching my how-to videos, subscribe. Then you get updates of when I publish how-to videos. Also, check out the Chris Fix Twitter and Facebook links in the description below. That'll give you updates on when I publish new videos. I'll also put up top tips and giveaways, so that's helpful. Up on the screen, I'm going to put some how-to videos. One of them is going to be how to flush your coolant system to get it nice and cleaned out and add new coolant. There'll be some other videos as well. If you want to see them, click on them. The links are also in the description below, just in case you can't click on the screen.